We're in the middle of restoring this fishing boat that's sat unattended for 5 years, hasn't been touched. Before we get too far in the project, we want to make sure that this engine runs, because if this engine isn't worth anything, then the boat isn't worth anything. So today, we're going to find out. We're working on a 50 horsepower 2008 Mercury Outboard, 2-stroke, oil injected, and today we're going to do a compression test on it, and we're also going to fog it, make sure that all of the components are well lubricated, hook up some gasoline, and see if we can start it. So you're seeing inside the cylinder right now, right?
Yeah, we're seeing inside. We're looking at the actual cylinder wall. You can see the cross hatching.
It looks really clean to me, right?
And a little bit of discoloration, but
nothing to be concerned about.
No, it looks really, really good.
For something that's sat outside for 5 years without any, attention whatsoever.
Yeah,
pretty good. Yeah, this is good to do before you start the engine. Why?
We're just wanting to see, make sure there's not a lot of corrosion and stuff in the cylinders before you go spinning it over. That way we're not dealing with, possibly stuck rings or debris that may do more damage. Of course, if it's too bad, then
it may be a lost cause.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But no, this engine looks really good on the inside.
You're removing this, it's called the Airbox. Why?
Yeah, we're gonna shoot the fogging oil into the carburetors so that we lubricate all the internal components, including the cylinders.
Yeah.
Because it's been setting up for an amount of time, and everything may be dry in there.
So we're putting the plugs back in. This is the most disorganized compression test I've ever seen. Putting the spark plugs back into the engine because, as Dan just said, when we spray fogging oil in, we don't want it to just shoot out the back of the engine. So make sure that it's all plugged up.
So we're going to hook up a remote start to it so that we can crank the engine over without having to actually
run up to the console, right?
Yes, and turn on the ignition switch.
So you want to be starting it while you're spraying in there, right?
Yeah.
And the reason is?
Well, doing it this way, we could have just sprayed some fogging oil in the cylinders, which would have lubricated the cylinder somewhat, but this thing's been setting up for a while, so this way we're lubricating all the internal components.
By running it, it's running that oil all the way through the engine, we're circulating it all the way through.
Past all the bearings and everything, so that way everything's lubricated and preserved.
You need to be on this side, Chris.
All right, so in doing a compression test, we're going to check the actual health of the engine. Basically, we're checking to see how much each cylinder will build in compression, and that's measured in PSI. You're looking for no more of a variance between cylinders of approximately 10%. So a typical engine, 10-15 PSI at most variance between cylinders. All right, so we've got just a basic compression gauge. These can be picked up generally at any auto parts store. They got different adapters on them to fit different plug holes. You basically just thread this into the engine and turn it over. Now just crank the engine over for a few seconds, watch your gauge till it pretty much peaks and steadies out. All right, that's good. All right, so we're right at 120 PSI.
So that's what we're looking for, that range for the next two cylinders.
Within a few PSI of that for the next two.
I was looking at it from far away, but it looked like they were all right around the same.
They're all almost dead on 120 PSI. So this engine is in really good shape. So if you don't have access to a remote start and you're having to actually turn the engine over using the ignition switch in the boat, there's a couple things that you got to keep in mind. One is if you're doing it that way, you need to disable the ignition system because you do not want things arcing, sparking, throwing fire. And if it's a fuel-injected engine, you would want to disable the fuel pumps so that you're not injecting fuel into the engine.
Great. Oh, that makes me feel good that we can continue this project and it's not been a complete waste of time. But for the final test, let's get some gas hooked up to this thing and try and turn it over, right?
See if she'll light off.
It's just totally like demonstrative of Dan's anal retentive personality. He doesn't trust that Bill tightened these plugs enough, so he's gone back and retightened them just to make sure. That's just how he is. That's just kind of.
I can't help it.
He strives for perfection.
That's the way I'm made.
People haven't checked it out yet. That coupler on the trailer, we treated with some evaporust from CRC last time. Check out that video and see how we cleaned that up, and a bunch of other tools and components that were really rusted up, made them look like brand new again. Okay, so we've got a small portable fuel tank back here that Dan's getting ready. We're gonna hook up the boat. We wanted to move it outside. Since we're cranking it up, we didn't want to be cranking it inside with all the carbon monoxide fumes and everything. We're also going to go ahead and break out a new fuel line for this engine. So these are important. You got to make sure that you get the correct fittings for your motor. Each outboard brand uses different style fittings, and depending on how old they are, they may have a different style of fitting as well that fits to the engine. The tank usually can find something that's going to fit it. This particular tank, instead of a quick connect fitting like what this hose has, we're going to take that fitting off and just thread the hose right onto the fuel nipple that's down there on the tank. But it's really important, especially that you get that engine connection right and have the correct fitting there. So this is a Mercury Outboard. They use these quick disconnect fittings like what you see here on the package. So that's what's going to connect to this engine here.
Well, we was hoping she was going to start, but she won't. So now we're going to have to dig a little deeper to find out why she's not starting. This thing has been setting up for years and years, so it just may not be getting fuel because the carburetors are just gummed up.
We've got 3 carburetors on here. Take them off, take them apart, rebuild them, put them back on, and see if we can get it to start then, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that'll be next.
You know, we're going to do the carburetors anyway.
Hey, Dan, what about this? What about this switch here that says on off?
Oh, the safety lanyard switch?
Would that matter?
Yeah, we may want that in the on position.
It was off.
All right, and this is an old 2-stroke, so this is push to choke, so push the switch in as well, that'll help it.
Switch in. Oh!
She's alive.
We're stupid. Make sure that your safety lanyard's turned on if you want to crank the engine. That usually helps. The good news is that this engine runs. We can continue with the rest of this project confidently, knowing that this boat, we can put it on the water. So, good job, guys. Thanks for your help, Dan.
Anytime.
All right, now that we know that the motor does turn over when you have all of the switches turned on correctly, we're ready to do some basic maintenance on it. It's sat for 5 years plus, and so it needs some love. We're gonna open it up and do some basic maintenance on it. First thing we're gonna do, after I take off the cover here, is we are going to drain the oil out of the reservoir up here. And then we can get to the carburetors and get those off. So let's get started. All right, we have Jordan here is gonna help us with the oil change. We've pulled out this Jabsco oil change bucket here. We sell a ton of these and they're real handy in your shop. It's got a heavy duty impeller pump on the top here that's gonna pump the oil out quickly. Just connect it to a battery, which we have here, and makes pretty quick work of it. Ready to get started? You know, this oil's been sitting as long as the boat, so it's no good anymore. We want to get fresh oil in there. It's a 2-cycle engine, so it's mixing the oil and the gas when it runs, but you don't have to mix the You don't have to mix the gas and the oil yourself.
Yeah, no mixing in the tank. It's going to mix right here for you.
All right, while the oil's draining out, I'm going to show you guys what we're going to get to next. There are 3 carburetors on this engine right here. See 1, 2, 3 stacked on top of one another. We're going to have to remove all these components here so we can get to those, and then we're going to open those up, clean them up, rebuild them. We've got rebuild kits here, and just get those in really top condition, and then we'll put them back on. All right, so looks like we took about 3 quarts out and emptied the oil reservoir completely. And now we're ready to remove that and any other components that are in our way to get to the carburetors. It's got like this little grommet. It sits down on this hinge or this bracket as well. There's an oil hose here. We're not going to disconnect it. We're just going to leave it connected. We're just going to kind of lay it off to the side. Jordan's going to zip tie it, make sure it's not bouncing around or whatever. That linkage rod is connecting all 3. Pull those off on each side, and then we can take those bolts out of the front of each carburetor there. It's unfortunate for you all that they haven't invented smell-o-vision yet, but what's happened is Jordan's disconnected the fuel line there where the fuel filter is, and immediately we're all treated to this wonderful scent of fuel fumes, and maybe getting a little bit high from it. But anyway, a lot of fuel is draining out, so he's making sure to try and clean all of that up. All of the fuel lines are disconnected now. All we have to do left is just to remove these bolts, these mounting bolts off the front of each carburetor. We're going to turn the engine to one side, so it makes it easy to access those. And then we just untighten these bolts, and the carbs should come right off.
It still smells a little bit like old gas too, which is nice. Yeah, I was going to use my torch to heat these hoses up, take them off these carburetors, but I thought that might not be a good idea.
Yeah, let's not put flame and fuel next to each other just yet.
Yeah.
So this top one has the fuel filter connected to it, right? We're going to replace this. I just want to show, it's interesting, like, there used to be a part number on this fuel filter, and, it was probably like a 7 or 8 digit number, 35 - something or other. All of that's smudged. There's no reading it anymore. It's why it's so important that you get the serial number off of the motor to look up any parts, make sure you get the right one. Now, these are pretty universal. There's a few different sizes of them, but you always want to look up the parts using the serial number to make sure that you get the right stuff, because a lot of parts look similar. Miguel's getting the last bit of fuel out of these carburetors, and he's going to take them off and rebuild them. We're going to use these Sierra carb rebuild kits. They come with all the gaskets and springs and stuff inside the carburetor to properly rebuild it. We're also going to put a new float on it as well. And that's really all you need for a carb rebuild, is these 2 things right here. So we'll send Miguel on his way to the studio where he can open these carbs up, have some space to work. So we've sent Miguel off over to the studio so that he can rebuild the carbs, and it also gets all of his snide comments out of the way so that we can focus on doing good work here. The next thing we're gonna do is come down here and take this propeller off. Before we do that, we need to reconnect the engine to the battery so that we can trim it up, make it easier to access. So we're gonna do that right now. Jordan's hooking it up, and then we'll trim up the engine. So this is looking crusty, as you can see, and we're gonna see how easy it is to take off. Dan's got just your simple hammer and screwdriver and whatever other tools are gonna be needed to get this loosened up. There are these little tabs here that you have to lift up, which he just did. Those tabs are basically there. They block you from being able to turn that nut. With the prop off, the next thing that we want to do is check the water pump impeller. There's a rubber impeller inside this lower gear case that is pumping water into the engine and then cooling it. And those things, over time, they wear out. They can crack, they can break. So we want to take it off, inspect it. We're going to replace it with a brand new one. To take this gear case off right here, you remove these 4 bolts. There's 2 on each side.
There's also a hidden bolt that's underneath your torque tab. Do not forget that one. But before we do any of that, we got to disconnect the shift rod, which it varies on different types of motors. This particular motor here has a 2-piece rod that disconnects right here. Before you disconnect this, you want to make note of the position of, say, this jam nut on the bottom, so that you can put it back in the exact same location. There's no threads showing on the underside of it, so that makes it pretty easy. We're going to put it back there. Well, if you notice, the torque tab's not centered, and the purpose of it is to offset the torque of the motor to help the boat track straight.
So if it's off center, or if it's off from where it's supposed to be, then the boat's not going to go in the right direction, basically.
Yeah,
It'll drift, basically. The hidden bolt's actually this one right up here. See right there?
Yep.
It's not this, it's this back here. So you've got to remove that little tab, anode tab, whatever, and then that bolt's revealed and you can take it out. How many times has somebody struggled to get the lower unit off, or the lower gear case off because they didn't remove that tab?
I did my first time.
Yeah.
I do get aggressive.
Yeah.
I would have pulled a torch out. I would have started wedging on things. Luckily, I just called my dad, and he's like, "Did you pull that bolt out in the middle?" And I was like, "What bolt in the middle?"
Right. They tuck it up under there. You can't see it. Anything that you're looking at as you see it for the first time? I guess not, huh?
No, it's just...
Just pretend like I'm not here, Dan. It's fine. So earlier you were telling me about how this has a metal housing for the water pump, right? That's underneath here is where the water pump is. A lot of them are plastic. This one's metal. All right, for the water pump replacement, we're using a repair kit from EMP. It comes with a brand new impeller, as you can see. It also comes with the gaskets, a new wear plate as well, water tube. And it's good to replace all those components when you're going in and replacing the impeller. Don't reuse gaskets, buy a complete kit, and put new gaskets on it as well to make sure that it's sealed really well. We had to pause for a moment. Dan had to run home, go to his nightstand and get a jar of Vaseline, and he's come back. Now, why do we need Vaseline?
You don't. These gaskets actually go on dry. You don't have to use any kind of sealant or silicone. I like to use Vaseline, light coating on them, just to help hold them in place while I'm assembling.
So you're just gonna put some around both sides of the gasket?
Yeah.
And it just helps it to adhere, basically?
Yeah, it just helps it, especially since we don't have this in a drive stand. We got it laid on its side.
Yeah, it'll help it stick. Another thing that Dan was talking about when the camera was off was when you're cleaning up the surface here where the gasket's gonna go, be careful not to be too hard or rough on it. You don't want to scrape any paint off of the surface. The paint is actually a protectant. It's keeping the bare aluminum from rusting. And so you want to make sure that you don't scrape or scratch the paint at all. If you do, you really need to repaint it before you put this stuff back together, because you don't want any corrosion to start. And then this is the inner gasket going on next. And again, as we mentioned before, the sealing strip needs to be facing out or towards you, because it's got a little bit of glue that's going to help it to adhere to the housing. Again, you want to make sure it's all lined up. All the bolt holes need to be lined up perfectly. All right. The next thing that we're going to do is actually just lubricate the impeller with this glycerin. We sell these. A lot of times impeller kits come with it, but this is just going to help the impeller to spin, right?
Yeah, it's going to help lubricate the impeller. It also makes it easier to install into the housing. And you do not want to use anything oil-based. You don't want to use traditional grease.
And so you got to line that impeller up with the key, just exactly so. All right, cool. All right, now we're going to put this housing back on, but we have to make sure that, again, that we bend the impeller vanes the same direction that they were originally. Do you remember?
Clockwise rotation. Clockwise rotation on the shaft.
Okay.
Yep. We're actually not going to fold the impeller into the housing. We are going to install the housing as we're rotating the shaft.
Okay.
Don't forget your top thrust washer.
So now you're going to just kind of
Gently apply pressure to the housing
as you're turning.
as I'm turning the shaft. And
in a
turn it
clockwise.
in clockwise rotation. That will put the blades in the correct orientation.
Do you need my help?
No.
And it just kind of spins in there. Again, that's where that lubrication really comes in handy.
Yeah.
'Cause it just slides right in there. Put the bolts back in and we're good to go. All right, we've got the bolts mostly threaded on, but they're not completely tightened yet. And the reason why is because with some outboards like a Yamaha, the housing has
It has actual locating pins to
set it in
to
perfectly.
center the housing where it's supposed to be. This particular housing does not. So the impeller is loaded to one side, which is loading the housing to one side. So the housing is actually up against the shaft right now. So we want to hold that centered as we tighten our bolts.
So it's good to have a second person in this case to be able to hold the housing in place to where it's not touching the shaft in any one
You
spot.
tighten, I'll hold her dead center. I'll tell you when to snug it.
And there are torque ratings for every single bolt on the engine, but we don't happen to have access to the owner's manual right now, so we're just gonna tighten until they're snug. Next thing we wanna do is put the prop on. We're gonna put a new propeller on. You saw that old one was in pretty bad shape, pretty chewed up. So we're gonna put a brand new prop on. We're gonna be using Turning Point propeller. These are really terrific propellers. They outperform a lot of the OEM propellers when they're tested against them. It's a two-part process. You got the propeller itself that you have to purchase, and then you have to purchase this hub, because what happens is this hub can fit many different sizes of propellers. If you need to size your propeller up or down to get different performance, you can do that. You don't have to change out the hub once it's on there. So what we have to do is get this hub that fits the correct motor, and we've got the one for this 50 horse Mercury. And then there's a range of props that'll fit this hub. We're trying to get a propeller that's pretty close to the same size as the one that was on it. The old one was a 10-inch diameter by a 17 pitch. This one is a 10 1/8 diameter by 15 pitch. So it might perform a little bit differently with this prop than the old one, but we'll see what happens when we get it out on the water. We've got Dan very worried right now about the potential of this shaft being bent. Obviously, you don't want a bent prop shaft. That's going to make the boat not run correctly. And as you can see, this whole, basically half of the propeller right here, there are rub marks on it, right? See that? And then you can see also the rub marks on the inside over here, right? So we know that the prop's been rubbing. The question is it rubbing because it's bent or misaligned in some way, or is the shaft bent? And that's the big question that we're gonna have to solve, because we don't wanna put a new prop on and all that kind of stuff and then discover that it's not lined up correctly. So this could turn out to be a much more complicated job than what we originally realized. If we have to replace this shaft, if we have to tear open this entire gear case and see what's going on in there, that could be a pretty complicated project. But we're crossing our fingers that it's just this old prop. It's been banged up pretty good, as you can see. We can even see that there is, it looks like that the hub inside here, the metal part here, is there's a gap up here between it and the rubber where it's pressed against it down here. So it's not aligned exactly. So it might be just that. We're not quite sure, but we're gonna get a dial indicator so that we can really determine for certain whether or not there's any bend on this shaft whatsoever. Hopefully there's not. We can put the new prop on and be on our way. We'll see what happens.
So we were concerned that we may have had a bent prop shaft. So we got a dial indicator set up so we can check our run out. The dial indicator has a needle on it that basically just moves in and out. All right. So if you have a bent prop shaft, it will move the needle and you will see the reading on the dial. So as we rotate this, if we had a bent shaft, you would see that needle moving. And it's measuring it in thousandths. And it is as straight as they come. Now that we know we got a straight shaft, we can continue on and put this thing back together and get her running.
Dan's going to pop the drain screws on the gear case down here. We're going to make sure all of the gear lube is drained out. And you have to do this in the right order.
Exactly. It did way just doesn't make as much of a mess. Take your bottom one out and then take your top out.
We're going to change the spark plugs next. Again, they may or may not need it, but let's put some fresh plugs on there. I mean, it's been a long time since its motor's been run, so.
We're checking our gap. So this motor is supposed to be 40.
Yes, 40 thousandths according to the label on the side.
All right, so I saw what you do, Ron, is you stick it where it's real thin,
yeah,
where it fits in, and
slide
then roll it around.
The space between the metal there and I guess it's where is that the igniter?
Yeah, between your center electrode and your grounding electrode. Because that ignition system is designed to fire the spark over a certain gap. If you go too far, it can be bad, and too close, you're not getting the correct spark. You're not getting full spark.
The gear lube is out of the gear case now, so we're ready to pump some fresh gear lube in there. We have Sierra's high performance gear lube here, and synthetic blend, and we've got their hand pump that we're going to use.
Multiple fittings.
Yep. So it comes with multiple fittings for different engine types. So in addition to the 3 different fittings for different engine types, it's also got different fittings to fit different size bottles, both a large and a small mouth. So variety of applications you can use this hand pump. And so as soon as we get this bottle open, we'll put the new gear lube in there. All right, we're in the final stretch here, and we just have to reassemble these last components on the engine, put the carburetors back on, the airbox back on, the oil tank, get it mounted on the top. But before we do that, we want to replace this fuel filter. I've got a Sierra fuel filter here that we're going to replace it with. Something that I noticed just as I was looking at this that can easily trip somebody up. You'll notice that there's this arrow on the filter that shows you the direction that the fuel flows, right? It only flows one direction. And you can see the shape of the filter here where, you know, this wider piece up here is at the top, and then the fuel flows down from there, right? The Sierra filter shaped in the opposite direction. So here, there's an arrow on the Sierra filter here pointing down this way. So if you were just looking at these 2 filters and saying, I got to replace it, you might be inclined to put the Sierra filter on like this because it's got that wider lip up here. So, you know, each filter, depending on whose brand it is, could be made differently. The important thing to always pay attention to, though, is that arrow and the flow of the fuel. Don't pay attention to the shape of the filter. Actually look for that arrow. We've got the engine put back together and we want to just run it and make sure that everything's in proper working order. So we're going to pull the boat outside so that we're not huffing a bunch of carbon monoxide. All right, so normally when everything is pumping correctly, when water is pumping and circulating through the engine, you're gonna see it, water coming out of this hole right here. They call this the P hole, right? And we didn't see any water coming out when we cranked it up. So one of the things we thought is maybe that nozzle and this hose that connects to it might be clogged up. So we disconnected it. Sure enough, tons of mud and grime just caked in there. So we've cleaned all that out. We just got the tube loose right now so we can flush it out. And we're gonna crank it right now and get the water coming out of that hose. Perfect. We have a running engine. It's tuned up. It's ready for the water. This makes me feel really good that we can continue with this project and without too much additional expense and costly maintenance and repairs. This engine's in good shape. These guys half know what they're doing, which is really great to see. We're ready to move on with the rest of this boat now. Now that we know that the engine's in good shape, we can move on with the rest of the boat. Next, we're gonna tackle the steering, the throttle and control, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So make sure you are liking and subscribing our channel so you can see all these great videos as we restore this boat. And if you've got any comments or suggestions or questions, just leave them down below. Thanks for watching.